Well, thank you, Ashley. Good evening, everybody. As she said, I'm the English teacher. If you weren't sure which one that was going to be on the poster, it was the only one taken by Jostins. As I sat there, she said, I need a picture. And I was like, oh, I haven't had a professional photo taken in forever. Then I looked at Lee's picture. It looked like he would taken right off of People magazine. He made sitting on a chair look sexy. Had to keep up with that. So thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. And Ashley for the kind words to start off. I am still full of shit, but I will give you a glance into, I guess, the real Joachim tonight a little bit. So I never would have known about this event if it hadn't been for my little sister, Talitha, texting me information multiple times and urging me to participate. Tonight's theme, In the Company of Good Men, had me questioning not my worthiness as a participant, since I do consider myself to be good and also a man, despite my childish antics at times. But instead of what, if any, of my life stories would be something worthy to share on such an evening alongside these other great men? Why would an audience want to listen to anything I have to say? Am I intriguing, funny, or entertaining? Will the audience be wondering, who is Joachim? How do you even say his name? He seems subversively funny and unconventionally handsome and ridiculously humble. I'm sure he has it all together. But like most people, I really don't have it all together. Maybe that's why I've decided to share this transformative journey. My story is about the trauma we can be exposed to in a bad relationship, the self-destruction we catch ourselves spiraling into, and if we choose, finding support and growing our ideas about what it means to be a good and strong and real man. So where do I begin to explain how I became the man I am today? To understand what a loving and caring family and marriage looks like, what it means to be dedicated to something and to work hard, despite struggles and obstacles placed in your way? Well, at the beginning, of course. I was born in 1979 in Papua New Guinea, a small island country in the Pacific. It's pretty exotic, eh? My parents, George and Marlene, after being married and starting careers in education and nursing, decided to press pause on their Canadian lives and volunteer as missionaries, a move that many family members considered to be unconventional, if not crazy. For 2 years, they lived amongst the Papua New Guineans and served as nurse, teacher, helper, confidant, and friend. In 1979, they were blessed with their first of 3 children. This guy. Those first few months of my life were spent being literally cared for by a village of people. While I cannot remember this time in my life, my parents have painted vivid pictures of island life amongst the Papua New Guineans with a brand new baby, and more so of the outpouring of love they felt towards me. Once back in Canada, the love and support continued. My parents showed my siblings Zach and Talitha and me, through their words and actions, unconditional love, which is still true to this day. They are the ones that taught us what it meant to be good, and in my case, what it meant to be a good man. But there were plenty of outside influences that offered different opinions on manhood and toughness that I would compromise into my way of thinking. A geek and nerd at heart, as Ashley mentioned, and a child of the 80s, I grew up watching Daniel's son defeat Johnny with a devastating, albeit illegal and controversial, crane kick to the head to win the tournament, and the girl, John McClane, running through broken glass and leaping off the exploding Nakatomi Tower to save his wife from the evil Hans Gruber, Rocky Balboa, defeating not only the machine-like boxer Ivan Drago, who killed his best friend Apollo Creed, but I argue all of communism as well. To 80s Joachim, these icons were the man's man, being physically as well as mentally tough. What did Arnold Schwarzenegger do in Commando? When the evil South American General Arias and wannabe president kidnaps his daughter Alyssa Milano and threatens to kill her unless Arnold flies to the country and assassinates the current president so Arias can gain control? That's the old story, right? He did what any real man would do, of course. He kills the guards escorting him on the 12-hour plane ride. Just as the plane takes off, jumps out of the plane from 100 feet up, lands safely in a shallow marsh, tracks down some of the goons and interrogates them for information before killing them, kidnaps a woman to help him escape, who of course later falls in love with him, robs a gun store, stealing enough ammunition and weapons to take on a small country, which of course is a good thing because he then steals a plane, flies to a small country where his daughter is being held, kills everyone he encounters, and beats the main antagonist to death with his bare hands, saving his daughter and, of course, earning the eternal love of his once kidnapped now accomplice model girlfriend. The only thing Arnold didn't do in that movie was worry, cry, or show any significant emotion, because that's not what a man did. He got the job done, no matter the cost, and never, ever showed any weakness. But maybe tough doesn't accurately describe Arnold and those 80s action heroes men. Maybe a better word is fictional. However, I wouldn't come to that realization until I faced my own challenges. As I moved through high school and into university, I developed and defined my own moral code and what it meant to be a man. First of all, I am fiercely loyal to my family and friends. You can just ask them. You need someone to help you pick up 60 pieces of gyprock and move it at 9:30 on a Friday night? Just call me. The loyalty comes from a place of love. I am compassionate and I love deeply. Two qualities that originate from my Catholic faith and were nurtured by my missionary parents all those years ago. I also try not to burden those around me with unnecessary problems or worry. After all, that's not what it meant to be tough, right? And manly. At least I thought so, until I got divorced. I know, spoilers, right? I was going to regale you with the juicy details of the epic story of my toxic marriage and imminent divorce. Something worthy of a reality TV show that you might find on like Bravo or Slice. But then I realized my ex doesn't deserve the airtime or the energy. So let me give you the Coles Notes version of my story. And for those of you who don't know, Coles Notes was like a summary thing that they used to give out in high school at a bookstore called Coles. You could go, like, if you wanted to cheat on Hamlet and not read Hamlet, you got the Coles Notes version. And bookstores are where you got information before the internet. Libraries too, I guess. So therefore, I present the Coles Notes summary of Joachim's failed marriage, which is still a working title. It was the relationship that started in high school and then rekindled some years after we had broken up, which probably wasn't a good idea. How much do people change from high school to adulthood? I think about how I behaved and acted in high school, and I'm definitely a bit more mature. Nonetheless, the high school feelings didn't match our grown-up attitudes and expectations of life, but it felt familiar and safe. After dating for 2 years, minus a few breakups, more foreshadowing, should have seen that coming as an English teacher, I decided to propose because, well, I was the ripe old age of 32, and wasn't that what you were supposed to do? We had known each other since grade 9, which kind of already felt like a lifetime together. Only made sense to propose despite any misgivings I had about what our future might be like. After 2 attempted proposals, that's more foreshadowing, she finally said yes on my 3rd try. Yay, right? Yeah, that's what I said. Here's what I can say about our wedding. I didn't really have a say in anything about what was planned, which was my fault. I should have argued for what I wanted, but I also had countless people regurgitate the happy wife, happy life mantra at me, which made me feel like it wasn't about me. It was about her. What I should have realized was that it was about us. We didn't talk the week leading up to our wedding. She was angry about something. Seemed like she was always angry about something. About 30 minutes before we were to be married, she sent me an angry text about something, and I don't even remember, and I thought, do I really want to marry her? What if I just called it off? She'd be so pissed at me. I talked myself into believing it was just the normal pre-wedding jitters and the man up. Everything would be fine once we were married, which of course was completely foolhardy. Our first year of marriage was stressful. A few days after our wedding, she told me she wasn't going to move into my house because she was caring for a sick father and wanted to live with him. Unless I, of course, could buy a house that would accommodate everybody. After 9 months of living in separate homes and lying to my family about it the whole time, I decided to sell my house and move into her parents' home. My family thought I was crazy, even if they never told me so. Marriage was about sacrifice, right? I can man up and deal with a bit of hardship. In retrospect, maybe the staple was a bad idea here. Jeez. We made it to our first year anniversary, and I thought, okay, that wasn't the best, but it wasn't unbearable. We'll find a new house soon enough, and then we can start living our lives together. I was so naive. Things quickly took a turn for the worst. I soon found inappropriate text messages between her and some guy. When I confronted her about it, she lied and then got angry at me for finding the texts on her phone. How dare I? Despite this betrayal and anger, I tried to forgive her and move on because my faith had taught me that marriages have their ups and downs, that getting through the tough times make the happy times that much better, and that you don't give up on marriages. We have made vows to each other before God and our families. 50% of marriages might fail, but ours wasn't going to be one of them. What I didn't know is that there weren't even going to be happy times again. She soon stopped talking to me, which was super awkward because we lived in her parents' house and there really wasn't any place to go. When she did talk to me, it was in anger. I was so stressed and depressed that I was hardly sleeping. I knew my family loved me unconditionally, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them. I was embarrassed and I felt like a failure. I needed to man up and work towards some solutions, so I suggested couples counseling. We lasted one whole session together before the counselor said, "There's no point in her coming." I started considering a divorce. I even Googled annulment, but felt like I was too old to start over again and that I didn't want to be the divorced guy. Shortly after our second year anniversary, I knew I couldn't carry on this way any longer. I went over to my parents' place, sat down at their kitchen, and I cried for 10 minutes straight, and they cried with me. I told them everything and said I didn't know what to do. They told me they loved me and would always support me, as would my siblings. They suggested I move back into their house so that I could focus on myself. I knew it was the right thing to do, but I felt like a huge failure. I decided I needed to go to see my doctor and tell her everything, too. She wanted me to take medical leave right away, then and there, but I said I had responsibilities. I had an intern, and that it wasn't a good time to go. She prescribed antidepressants and sleeping pills and told me I had to check back in with her in a few weeks. She was worried for my health, but I was too worried about what it would look like if I went on medical leave. People would talk and speculate. That would make me out to be weak, and I didn't want the embarrassment. Just before Christmas of that second year, my parents sat me down and told me, "Joachim, it's okay to divorce somebody that never really loved you." Hearing them say that was finally what made me realize it was okay to start the separation and divorce proceedings. To no one's surprise, my wife was fine with that decision. By this time, I was so deeply depressed that I wasn't sleeping at night, sometimes only getting 1 hour, and I was pushing 500 pounds. It was over the Christmas break that my doctor told me I no longer had a choice in the matter, and that if I didn't go on medical leave, reduce my stress level, and work on my health, that I would be looking at an early grave. I took her medical note, submitted it the day before we returned to work in January, and I went on medical leave. For the first few months of my medical leave, I kept a very low profile. I didn't use social media, sent a few text messages, except to my immediate family, and rarely left the house except to meet with lawyers or to go to counseling. Going out meant possibly running into friends, colleagues, or students, and I wasn't prepared to explain what was going on in my life. In March 2015, I finally legalized the separation from my wife, ensuring we no longer had any financial obligations to each other, and also started the divorce process. It was also at that time that both my doctor and counselor suggested I leave Regina. They argued that I really wasn't healing if I was cooped up in my parents' house, especially if my soon-to-be ex-wife kept texting me, and that time away would be literally just what the doctor ordered. My brother Zach, who had been living in Toronto since he had graduated high school, asked me to come and live with him for a few months so I could work on myself. My parents, sister, and brother-in-law also wanted me to go. They were also worried about me and wanted me to get better. Soon I was packing my suitcase for an extended stay in Toronto. Just before we left to the airport, Talitha said to me, "I miss my funny, happy brother who could always make me laugh. Go find that guy." She was right, of course. I had not been myself for quite some time. I needed to go and reboot myself. I needed to try new things and start focusing on what made me happy. To find my joie de vivre, as my brother Zach would say. Although I had originally protested moving to Toronto, I quickly realized it was the best decision I could have ever made. Zach gave me space to heal, while at the same time slowly pushed me to try new things and work on myself. And he had plenty of support from his friends and also welcomed me as their friend. I FaceTime regularly with my family in Regina, let them know how I was doing. At the suggestion of my counselor, I'd begun writing a daily journal. Writing down my fears, worries, hopes, and dreams. I also began working out again. First only a few times, and then working all the way up to 5 times a week. I watched movies, read books, slept in when I could. It was all therapy for the mind, body, and soul. By June, I was feeling more like myself, and had started sleeping more regularly. By July, I was ready to come back to Regina. When I returned, my first order of business was to go and see my doctor. When she saw me, she couldn't believe how much I had changed. I had found my smile again, and my sense of humor had returned. I still thought about my failed marriage and had some depressed days, but I knew that I was making progress. She told me to keep it up. But to be truthful, it took more than 2 years for me to feel like my old self again. In September of 2017, my sister Talitha told me it was time to take the final step in my healing journey and to start dating again. Sorry, it's a little hot up here now, apparently. Holy moly. It was cold to start off with. This is not part of the show. Relax, relax. I don't know, see if I can throw this to somebody in the front, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate that. Whew. All right. Sorry, Ashley, that's cutting into my time, but it's hot now. My Talitha told me it was time to take the final step in my healing journey and to start dating again. I was doubtful, nervous, and scared. Where would a then 38-year-old teacher even begin to look for someone to date? I was so old. Who wanted to date someone so old? The only adults I saw on a regular basis were other teachers, and I knew better than to complicate the workplace. Not to mention that I carried around my new divorced status like an embarrassing mustard stain on my character. Always there, no matter how much you tried to wipe it away. Talitha suggested I try online dating, but that wasn't how you met people, was it? Weren't you supposed to go out there and physically meet people? That's what people did when I was growing up. How would I even know if the women I met online were telling the truth about who they were, the type of man they wanted? How do you get to know someone through text messages, emails, behind carefully crafted, duck-faced pictures with just the right lighting and maybe a filter or two thrown on for good measure? Plus, I lacked confidence. Last time I'd gone on a date was more than a decade ago. That's what I thought, a decade. It's like 10 years. I had changed so much since I was younger. Talitha told me that online dating was exactly what I needed because I could get straight to the point about who I was and what I was looking for. No need for unnecessary small talk or wasting time on someone who really didn't share the same interests. And so, on October 1st, 2017, after some careful research into the different dating services available, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but apparently Tinder's a hookup site. And I might find old students on there. That's right. I signed up for Match.com and spent about 3 hours carefully filling out all the information on my profile. Birth date, March 13th, 1979. So I'm 38 years old. Fuck, that's kind of old, hey? Height, 6'6". Is that too tall? Women like tall guys, right? Eye color, brown. Hair color, well, shit, it used to be brown. Kind of looks brown now. That's only because I dyed all the gray away. Do I say that? No, I better not say that. Body type. Well, athletic. Yeah, a little bit. I work out. Muscular. Yeah, just a little bit of layering covering it. Muscles. I'm stocky. Status. There it was. I had to select divorced, right? No point leaving that question blank or lying and then later springing it on a date. Kids. No, thank God I didn't have any kids with my ex. That would have made the whole divorce and dating thing a lot more complicated. But do I want kids? More than anything. Again, time to be honest. I continued filling out my profile. Interests, hobbies, income, pets, allergies, must-haves, deal breakers, likes, dislikes, age range of the woman I'd like to connect with. How young is too young? How old is too old? Pretty much anything you could think of so that you paint an accurate picture of who you are, not to mention the pictures themselves. You could upload 10 pictures. Did I even have 10 pictures? As part of my healing journey, I'd stopped all social media and avoided pictures whenever possible. I didn't really have any current pictures of myself, but I had a phone, so I got it out, snapped a couple hundred pictures, and I picked the best ones and put it on my profile. Last thing to do was to publish my profile and see what happened. As soon as I hit the old upload button, I had dozens of those little red alert icons telling me if someone had looked at my profile, what pictures they had looked at, if they liked anything about it, if anybody had messaged me. So many of those little red icons. Was I crushing this online dating thing? I was not. What I soon came to learn about online dating services is what they want to keep you excited and engaged with their service. Pump up your ego and make every little transaction with your page an amazing accomplishment, worthy of an alert on your phone. Sure, I had a few conversations in those first few days, but I started to notice they were all superficial and generic. As you can probably tell, I like to talk and get to know people. Therefore, when someone said hi, I replied with, "Hey, how's it going? How's your day treating you so far?" And then I'd wait until they finally replied, "Good." I'm like, fuck, that was pretty engaging. When I finally showed Talitha my profile a few days later, I was kind of proud of what I had written and posted about myself. She looked it over, gave me the weirdest look, and then laughed at me for about a minute. And then she said, "Why did you use these pictures? You're in a yellow room. You look yellow. All you can see is your yellow face and shoulders. You look like you're about to die. Why are you wearing a green shirt? It clashes with the background. What, that doesn't look good on you now, does it? Don't say so much about yourself. You're giving too much away. You want women to be intrigued and want more. You've written a whole novel." See, I didn't know anything about dating at that time. She then spent the next few hours dressing me up in different outfits, taking me outside in natural light for pictures, posing me this way and then that way, unzipping my jacket, zipping my jacket, holding my arms at my side, put them in my pockets. Right? The whole time giving me directions and wardrobe changes. Okay, stop and look at the camera. Okay, now just look natural. Okay, look up. Okay, now look down. Okay, now finish laughing. How do you finish laughing? I gotta start first. Pretend she said something funny. Pretend she said something heartfelt. Pretend she's flirting. And on and on. However, when we were finished, I had to agree that my profile was much better, and women noticed too. I had more of those little red icon badges on my Match app every morning. Soon I was setting up a few dates with some different women. Player, right? That's what you're thinking. But I wasn't. Nervous as I was, I knew these were the necessary steps. Once again, I turned to my little sister for advice. Talitha told me what to wear, to be natural, ask meaningful questions, listen and respond, and most importantly, do not speak ill of my ex, even if the subject were to come up, but instead say that things didn't work out and I was moving on with life. The details of the divorce, she told me, were something you talk about on your third or fourth date with the same woman, but only if she asked. Well, those first few women were nice. I found myself having to do all the conversational work, which got to be very draining. I also didn't feel any real connection, and since it was better to be honest, I told them so when the topic of another date came up a few days later. By the third week of October, I had begun to lose hope in online dating. The women I messaged didn't message me back or seemed aloof and indifferent about ever going on another date, or going on a date, I should say. I was being sent messages from women with very sexy and suggestive pictures, asking me to email them on a personal address instead of using the Match app, which had my spidey senses tingling. So a little research, I discovered these profiles were either fake with people trying to con you out of money, or they were escorts and prostitutes trying to get their own money. All this was very frustrating, so I decided that I'd give myself until the end of October, and then I'd cancel my subscription. I'd rather be alone than tied down to my phone waiting for someone to choose me from the online catalog of men. Then, on Tuesday, October 24th, 2017, I remember the dates, so you know it's important, right? I woke up to a new message from Megs81. All it said was, "Bonjour." And I thought, well, at least this woman had read my profile and knew I was bilingual. I messaged back my usual, "Hey, how's it going? How's your Tuesday treating you so far?" And almost immediately I received a thoughtful response that asked me some questions and started a conversation that lasted the whole day. This woman was straightforward but funny, mature, educated, had her life together, and seemed genuinely interested in me. All good things so far. I found out her name was Megan. She was 2 years younger than me, grew up in Strasbourg, Saskatchewan, had a miniature long-haired wiener dog named Pippa, owned her own house in Regina, was a geologist, working on a 12-hour night shift on the oil rig near Kindersley, and wanted to go on a date with me that Saturday. The best part was, even though the date was still days away, she still messaged me every morning. By the time we finally went on our date, some of my nerves had vanished since I felt like I already knew this woman to some degree. When we first sat down, I thought, wow, she's even more beautiful than her pictures. Don't fuck this up. We ended up chatting for about 3 hours about almost everything. Small talk at first, and then more intimate conversations as the drinks kept coming and the night went on. Interestingly enough, that's a pretty good pause. Her and I had the exact same birth date, just 2 years different. Later, she would confess that her sister-in-law had done some Google research ahead of time to find out everything she could about me. My unique name had made it quite easily, apparently. You were supposed to do research before you went on a date? I didn't know that. We closed down the restaurant and were the last customers to leave. Even though Megan was leaving for the rigs the next day, we agreed to stay in touch and go on another date as soon as she was back in Regina. The next 2 weeks were filled with hundreds of text messages as we got to know each other. It was kind of like going on a date every single day. We had both had bad relationships within the last while. We both suffered from some depression. We both enjoyed the first date. When we finally did go on our second date, I felt like I really knew Megan and was comfortable to talk about my failed marriage. It was a tough and emotional experience to share, but I figured, what the hell, she might as well know the truth. Megan listened attentively, asked questions, and passed no judgment. When I finished, I felt a huge relief. No matter what happened next, at least she knew I wasn't hiding anything and that I was ready to move past that part of my life. Since that day 2 years ago, a lot has happened. Megan would come back from work on the rigs, and we'd spend much time together as possible. We were both cautious, but open to exploring our relationship. We soon met and were accepted by each other's families, which is another huge checklist item. Megan did well for an introvert amongst some of the most extroverted people around. If you haven't met the Smadus, they'll be the loudest ones in the room tonight. And it was a few months into our dating that we had our first argument. But unlike my previous relationship, we actually talked it out and resolved our differences, like adults do, apparently. A first for me. After our first holiday together in Banff, I knew I wanted her to move in with me. Of course, she said yes. Soon she was redecorating the house because it was a little too bachelorish and put her house up for rent. Things were really good. On December 10th, 2018, when Megan finally returned home from another long stretch of working on the rig, I decided I couldn't wake up another morning with her just being my girlfriend. True, we'd only been dating for a little over a year, but I felt like I knew more than enough about Megan in that time to make the right decision. So I asked her to marry me, and obviously she said yes, because how could you resist? Thank you. But I'm married. 6 days later, Megan came downstairs to me to let me know that it was going to be a busy 2019, and she was also pregnant. That was the first time Megan made me cry, and I didn't care if it looked manly or not. As we planned our wedding, I couldn't help but think how different it was from my first wedding, which had been annulled, or as I had come to talk about it, my fake wedding. Megan and I made decisions together. We compromised when we needed to, without either of us feeling like we lost. We set the date for June 8th, 2019, and that morning, when we woke up, I sang to her, "I think I want to marry you," and felt more joy than I had in a long time. Our wedding was perfect, except for the whole no drinking thing for Megan, but there was plenty of people to take up her share. Becoming her husband was one of the greatest days of my life, but then things got way better, even better. On August 23rd, 2019, which is 3 months ago, for those of you keeping track, tomorrow, after more than 24 hours of labor and an unplanned cesarean, we finally welcomed our new baby girl into the world. During the cesarean, I stayed up by the Megan's head to offer her support, so when the doctor started pulling out the baby, we could listen to what was going on. We could only listen to what was going on. The first thing he said was, "Oh my God, it's a big one." Good thing for the cesarean, right? Which was followed by, "Oh my God, look at all that hair." And then finally, "What a beautiful baby girl." I made that. Well, I'm part of it. When I first looked at her, I couldn't help but laugh and cry with pure joy. Finley Genevieve Smadu came into the world weighing in at 9 pounds, 5 ounces. Yes. Measuring almost 21 inches long and having more hair than I do. 3 months old, she's still absolutely perfect. I got one more because I'm a proud dad. Look at that face. I've heard the cliches about your life will never be the same again after a baby and you won't remember what life was like before her, and those are partially true, but I'm so happy my life will never be the same again, and I'll always remember what my life was like before Megan and Finley and our little Pippa. Those years during the breakdown of my marriage of depression, anxiety, and unhappiness were the darkest timeline for me, a place where I wasn't sure I'd ever be truly happy again, where I questioned my manhood and self-worth, but they were invaluable lessons about life and struggle. It's only in darkness that we truly appreciate the light, which is why I value every moment with Megan and Finley, as well as my family. My journey has taught me that getting a divorce or out of a toxic relationship, no matter how long you've been in it or how great it used to be, is much better than living a life of misery. That being tough or strong like the guys in those 80s action movies is complete bullshit. True toughness and strength does not mean struggling in silence and isolation. Real strength comes from knowing when the burden is too much to bear alone and seeking help from those who love you. I've learned that depression is not weakness, but rather an illness. And just like any other illness, you need to treat the symptoms. I've learned that you're never too old to find someone to love you. It's all about taking chances. My eyes are sweating a little bit here too. And maybe having a sister will help you set up a dating profile. I've learned that losing sleep because of depression and stress is terrible, but losing sleep to rock your baby girl back to bed is the best therapy you could ever ask for in the world. Finally, I've learned that I am a good man, a good friend, a good son, a good brother, a good husband, and dare I say, a great father. Thank you very much for listening for my story. That was probably long. Sorry, Ashley.